Be joining us through our live stream. Very thankful that we have this opportunity to broadcast to those that are not here, not only those that are our brethren, but for those that are not members of the Lord's church that may be curious as to what it is that we would be studying about and that we have presented for our sermon today, considering what they may already know about us from the YouTube broadcast, and I hope that they're able to view a transition, a difference from how we are there to how we are when we're assembled here, because all of our presentations, all of our sermons are not going to be centered on the same thing. And as we are gathered here today, this will give further insight as to what it is that's motivating us, driving us forward in the work that we're trying to do, and what it is that separates us from the denominational world around us, but also, first and foremost, for us to be edified and uplifted and for us to be brought into remembrance of certain things that we have signed up for, that are required of us as being Christians. Today we're going to be discussing the crux of the matter. This is a fairly common phrase that we would use in our terminology, in our discussion with people, that when we are trying to press a point or we're wanting to get to the point of a matter, we would use this phrase because that's what our English definition has for it. But it also carries with it the definition of a puzzling or difficult problem, an unsolved question. And we oftentimes don't use it that way, but this is the definition that we would use. An essential point requiring resolution or resolving an outcome. Or, definition number 3, a main or central feature as of an argument, but we want to consider all the way back into its origins as to what the word crux actually means. When we are saying that we're wanting to get to the crux of the matter, in Latin, crux referred literally to an instrument of torture, which I think you know what the next part of the definition would be, and that is oftentimes talking about a cross. So today, that's what we want to be talking about. What we want to study. We want to get to the crux of the matter. And the crux of the matter, the essential point, the main central feature of what it is that makes us who we are, what we are, and driving us to do the things that we are doing. This is the crux of the matter. As we've said in our Matthew study, in our Bible class, we're wanting to get to the heart of the matter, then you need to deal with the heart. The crux of the matter is the cross. This is what we have in chapter 17, 16 that we've been studying. What will lead us into chapter 18 with the discussion of who is going to be the greatest in the kingdom. The center of all of that is what Jesus has already presented about His death, burial, and His resurrection. We have been studying some things that are difficult to appreciate. The things of Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. Those attitudes, those characteristics. The ability to be able to see properly the law of God for what it is and the protection that it gives. To be able to fix disagreements and problems amongst brethren. To do things that God has commanded, such as being benevolent, praying, and doing those things from a proper motivation, is centered here. Here's the crux of it. And being able to produce those attitudes in my life. If we do not appreciate them, we won't be able to. If those attitudes are not in me, if I just turn them off because my mentality is they really do not matter, then we need to restudy chapter 16 and 17. To have these attitudes, we have been discussing them now in view and in light of the cross that Jesus sees. the greatest example of all of those characteristics and everything that Jesus has presented in those chapters is shortly to come. Because the cross is to change everything about us. And we discussed that last week in verses 24 and 27. To take up our cross from Matthew chapter 16, to take up our cross, and that is to be done daily. And why? Why would we need to do this? Because if I do not do that, as Luke records in Luke chapter 9, I will lose my soul. I will lose myself. The cross is to change everything about us, from our attitudes, how we think. It changes our relationship with Him, but it not only changes our relationship with God, the Father, Son, and the Spirit, it changes everything about us. It changes our relationship with one another. Not only with our own brethren, but it will change how our relationships are with those that are in the world around us. The cross is to cleanse our soul. That's true. And my soul, as we've discussed, is who I am. So the cross, in cleansing my soul, is cleansing me. Everything about me. Not just that which is internal, but even those things that would be external. When it comes to my aspect of the flesh and the things that I want physically, those things are being changed as well. And we need to bring that into view and into the aspect, because Jesus not only gave His blood, He gave His body. He gave Himself physically. And the religious world around us has the tendency of thinking, well, the things that I do physically do not affect the things of the soul. But that's not true. That as Jesus was teaching in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, so much of what is going to determine our outcome spiritually is based upon our relationship to the physical things. I mean, the end discussion of Matthew chapter 6 is about covetousness, materialism. Do not seek these things that are below. Do not establish your kingdom. Do not gather your treasure here on earth. But we're to lay up our treasure in heaven. What helps us to view that? The fact that we're supposed to daily take up our cross. That the cross symbolizes, as it did with Jesus, or it wasn't symbolism, it was figurative. Crucifixion. And for us, what is it that brings all of this into view is the ability, the willingness to be able to sacrifice. And that if I am not willing to sacrifice, then poor in spirit is not going to factor into my life. Mourning over sin is not going to factor into my life. Meekness, hungering and thirsting after righteousness. Being willing to extend mercy, pure of heart. When individuals mistreat me and despitefully use me, being able to pray for them, those things are not going to factor in. Why? Because self is going to say, I have to get back at them. I can't let this slide. I can't let this go. The ability to do as Jesus presented in Matthew chapter 5, where the Pharisees were saying, sure, you can be angry with your brother. You can say all manner of things against him. But then to properly view where Jesus says, no, if you're angry with your brother, if there's some type of offense or trespass, you go and fix it. If I'm not denying myself, if I'm not crucifying self, what will self say about that situation? Oh no, he should come to me. He's got a problem with me, he needs to come to me. This is the crux of it. When we think about the cross, we only picture Jesus on the cross. And most of the religious world as well, this is how they view the idea of the crucifixion. Well, yeah, Jesus was there. He gave of himself so that we could live, and that's all true. But Jesus is our great example. That in fact, if he's doing something, then there's something we're needing to mimic in that. And that's what Jesus is discussing. If you will take up your cross daily, if you would be willing to sacrifice, as I sacrificed, then you're able to be my disciple. What we oftentimes forget is that we need to be up there too. It's not just a matter of, well, yes, Jesus made the sacrifice, and that's all that's needed. The cross is a call to action. You want to be my disciple? You want to follow Christ? You got to be willing to sacrifice. You will need to be willing to die for this as He was. So to view the crucifixion and the cross as Jesus is the only one on there, Jesus is the only one being lifted up, oh no. Jesus said we have a cross to bear too, or to carry as well. And only when we put ourselves up there will we really have what God intended. That we are servants to one another. Not only servants to one another, but as Paul said in Romans chapter 1, he is a debtor both to the Jews and to the Greeks. We are servants to God, we are servants to one another, or even servants to those that are in the community around us. Why? Because we do not live to ourselves. And if we are not missing it, or we are missing this, and we do not have what God really intended for us, it could be that many of us here, that in fact we've gone through these elements. We've believed, we've repented, we've confessed that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, we were baptized for the remission of sins. But what does all that mean? What is the crux of the matter? What's the essential point? That if you are willing to go through all of this, you are saying, I am willing to sacrifice. I'm going to take my cross. This, as we said, is a call to action, and that there's requirement. I recognize the requirement that's being placed on me to be a disciple. Factor this into the equation as well. Going over to Luke's account of the Transfiguration, so we're dealing with Matthew 16 and 17, Luke 9:28, and it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings, he took Peter and John and James and went up into a mountain to pray. And as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was altered, and his raiment was white and glittering. And behold, there talked with him 2 men, which were Moses and Elias, who appeared in glory and spake of his decease, which he should accomplish at Jerusalem. The word for decease in this section, in this passage, is the Greek word exodos. The same as Exodus, a book of the Old Testament. When we are considering what is being presented at the Transfiguration, there is a decease that is coming to pass. Jesus is going to die, but again, the Transfiguration gives us further insight as to what death is. Death is simply an exodus, an exit, a leaving. It's not the end. It's not an annihilation. It's not termination. And that can be seen by the fact that Moses and Elias are here. But when we take it a step further and we are considering of what it is that Jesus should accomplish, what it is His mission is to do, the mission as presented here is similar to what Moses did. You know, Moses led an exodus from Egypt to where God had His people, and He sent Moses in to bring them out with the 10 plagues. That was a preparation for them to get ready. We're fixing to go. Get your things ready. Get your things packed. We're leaving here. The prophets, Elijah, they worked with and they labored with those people of the Exodus. The ones that were in and that were called out and being told, this isn't your final destination. We're heading out to somewhere else. And that even with the prophets, they are laboring with this people and they're warning, you're going to go into captivity, you're going to be punished, but you're going to come back. You're going to leave. But that did not prepare the people to exodus the earth. And both Moses and Elijah knew this. That's why they're there with Jesus and asking Him the things that they're asking Him. Yes, we got the people out and led them to the land of Canaan, but you're fixing to lead us home into eternity. Are the people ready? Jesus then entered into the world. He comes into view. He entered the world, and Luke's account tells us that He came, John came before Him, Jesus came after Him, to make ready a people. In Matthew 16, where Jesus says that He will build His church, He is building His people. He is making ready a people, a church, that are ready in heart, ready in life, that are ready and prepared to leave this world, to exodus, and go to be with the Father. He entered the world to do this, and He lived a sinless life to show us the way, to get everyone prepared, and then died on the cross to complete the exodus that was started by Moses all those years ago. That's what Matthew 16 and the cross is all about. This is what the Transfiguration is all about, is to make prepared a people that are ready to exodus. It's all about the change that will take place. But it's also about a change that takes place now. But it's not tangible. It's not things that we can necessarily see or feel. But as Jesus is presenting with the Transfiguration and the cross, the resurrection will make it seen. It will make it visible and make it known when we go through that change. Going back to Matthew 17 and verse 2, we have it being said of Christ, and was transfigured before them, and His face did shine as the sun, and His raiment was white as the light. The phrase "as the sun" is important, because that denotes an inward light. The sun in our solar system is the source of light. But then you have the moon that gives off a reflective light. And in this text, in this Greek language, in this phraseology, it is setting up the fact that Jesus' light is that which comes from within. He is not shining. It's not like Moses being a light that was reflective and that actually faded, 2 Corinthians 3:7. But if the ministration of death, written and engraven in stones, was glorious, so that the children of Israel could not steadfastly behold the face of Moses for the glory of his countenance, which glory was to be done away. The reason why Moses is there is because Moses recognized, what I did was great, and yes, it prepared a people, but what's happening now is beyond what I did. Jesus was changed. We are to be changed if we are to be Christians. But if you're going to be a Christian and you want to go through this change, you also have to go through the crucifixion. What we are discussing and the loss of understanding that people have in the religious world around us, this is the reason why people love denominationalism so much. It's not because of what we're talking about. But the denominational world has the mindset and the viewpoint, you don't have to change anything with them. You do not have to change anything about yourself to be a part of their group. But Jesus came along and he said, you know what, if you want to be with me, there's a change that has to take place. And where it starts is being willing to crucify yourself. To set aside your will and follow my will. In the denominational world, they do not have to put themselves on a cross. Jesus is on the cross and he did everything. Go back and read what Jesus said. There's action on my part. There's a requirement of me. In the denominational world, you just put Jesus up there and he will take care of everything. And thus, part of the reason why in the denominational world, they face so many worldly problems. But it's not just in the denominational world, it's inside of the Lord's church as well. Why do we suffer some of the same problems that the world faces? It's because some of our brethren have taken on this mentality. I've done these other elements. I heard, I believed, I repented, I confessed, and I was baptized. I did all of that, but they have not put themselves on the cross. And that's the missing element. That as we have it pictured in Romans chapter 6, this is a death that is taking place. I am being buried. That old man is being put away and I'm being raised to walk in newness of life. That's only possible by properly understanding and viewing this. To just go through the mode and method of baptism and thinking that, okay, Jesus is on the cross, he died for me, and I'm just set and I'm just taken care of. No, no, no. You are taking on a conversion and setting up a life of dedication that comes after that. And it's when we deal with that crux of the matter that we move from this picture and this scene into what life is all about. And just as we studied today, about needing a purpose, having a mission. You cannot stay up on the mountaintop. You've got to come down eventually. It's this element to then begin living the way God wants us to live that makes Christianity what it is. Putting it to practice, making application to live it out. And I cannot live what God wants me to live until I crucify myself. Self is always getting in the way. And this is how we fix it. So for our conclusion, we ask individuals, we desire for people to be a Christian, and to be a Christian only. No suffix, no prefix, just pure and simple, be a Christian. Then you really need to consider what that means. Then said Jesus unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, you want to be a Christian, you want to be a follower, let him deny himself. That's where it starts. And take up his cross, his crux, and follow me. Luke records, and he said to them all, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. This is not just a Sunday or a Wednesday or any other time where we as the church, we as brethren, come together. This is a daily activity for us that we are to be ever mindful that in everything that we're doing, this is our motivation. This is how we gauge. This is how we make our decisions. Is this something I'm really needing to do? Is this something that I'm wanting to do? Where does the will of the Father play into this? Is this an element to where I'm needing to deny myself so that His will may be done? All of Jesus' life was a life of denial. He always sought the will of His Father. And that's the crux of the matter. Romans 6, as we mentioned, discusses the death, the burial, and the resurrection. That in us being baptized for the remission of sins, that's what we are going through. Where's the old man crucified? It's at that point. And we're needing to realize that it's at that point that I am saying that yes, this is what I'm doing. Then you need to live it. You need to not only hear those things, but do those things. But then we have Paul stating in Romans 6:16, he goes even further. If I am denying myself, taking up my cross, and that daily, then here is what comes after. Here's my life in a nutshell, being a Christian. Know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, His servants ye are to whom you obey, whether of sin unto death, or of obedience unto righteousness. There's no both situation. It's one or the other. Either you're going to be the servant of sin, which brings death, or servant of obedience unto righteousness. But God be thanked that you were the servants of sin, but you have obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered you. Being then made free from sin, ye became, notice, the servants of righteousness. In the Greek, that word is literally translated a slave. Becoming a Christian, you don't live for yourself. And we live in a society that says you have to look out for number one. The crux of the matter, and that of Christianity, is you no longer are a servant to sin, to death, to yourself. Saying that I want to be a Christian, I'm saying, okay, obedience. Following the commandments. Doing what is said. Do not say, I am ready to be a Christian if you are not ready to do this. So for those that have a desire to become a Christian, that's what you're needing. You're needing the death, burial, and resurrection, but you're not just needing the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. You're needing the death, burial, and resurrection of yourself. And that after making that decision that you're willing to do that, to obey what it is that Jesus said for salvation, and after you have received that, start living it. No longer being a servant to sin, but a servant of obedience. Obeying from the heart. A pure and proper motivation. And then, for us that are members of the Lord's church, we need to remember these things. What is it that keeps us going? Why sacrifice the way that we're willing to sacrifice? It's the transfiguration. Glory awaits us. An eternal change that awaits all of those that will faithfully wait for His return. And that's what the Church of Christ offers. That's why God gave us the assembly, gave us these times of study, the brethren that we have that are like-minded, that are focused on these things. So that when we begin to doubt and we ask questions, or we may even question, why go forward? Why press on? Like Elijah, when we say, it's enough, I've had enough, just let me die. That we can have others that are in the struggle, that are in the fight with us, to give us that touch of compassion and saying, let's go. Just a little bit further. So if there's any that has a need, we ask that you come as we stand and as we sing together.